Hello, welcome. I got a message on Facebook. It was a question that someone had asked me that I really liked the question because it's the type of question that I would ask. And so what the question is quite simply is it possible to guide oneself into a state so deep that you emerge with amnesia? It's an incredibly simple to understand question, but the answer is, it demands a lot of detail. So I'd love to answer that. Now, my initial response I wrote back was, I think so. And then I realized there were some details that I didn't understand in the question. So I'm going to cover as much as I can here to describe it. First of all, I'm going to address it as though you, the viewer here, has asked the question, so I'll be talking to you specifically. Let's talk about what amnesia is. Amnesia is the absence of memory. It is an experience that one had a form of consciousness in, but then is no longer accessible. So it does not mean unconscious. So with that as an understanding, and again the question is, can someone guide themselves into a state so deep they emerge with amnesia? The easiest and simplest form of amnesia is lost time. And that is typically done, a person can do that fairly easily in meditation. It is about focusing so intently on one thing that as you focus more and more, there are things you no longer pay attention to. And one of the last things that you would lose awareness of is the passage of time. Now, typically how I accomplish lost time in hypnosis when I'm actually hypnotizing somebody is I link feeling better or pleasure or enjoyment to going deeper, which simply means focusing, so that the deeper you go, the better you feel, and the better you feel, the deeper you go. If you want to do this to yourself, and again, you can try it out, it may take some practice, simply focus on feeling better as you focus more and more, so that the more you focus, the more pleasure, enjoyment, the better you feel. And you can do this up to a point where you don't want to stop for at least a while. And you can do it up to a point where if you set an alarm, it goes off and you're wondering, wow, I didn't know I was there for an hour. So that is possible. Some other, now when you think about amnesia as well, if you want to try and induce amnesia in yourself to a memory or to an event, that's a bit more challenging. Keep in mind the nature of hypnosis is you have to discard the critical factor, and what you're trying to do to create amnesia is you're trying to intentionally remove something you know is already there so that you can't think about it. And one of the ways to do that is to elicit a very strong state of confusion and link it to a specific memory. It takes practice. You have to understand confusion is not pleasant. And a person who elicits confusion in themselves has to willingly create this confusion in themselves and link it and start with a mental agreement that anytime they try and think of a particular thought, a particular memory, a particular event, that they would feel confusion and to practice it. And the easiest way to avoid confusion is to just forget about it, don't think about it. And again, that's going to take a quality of practice that I haven't been able to test on myself yet. If, for example, the question is being asked to emerge with amnesia, if you mean from a trauma, from a pain, first of all, let's talk about how you do that in hypnosis. Typically, one hypnotist to hypnosis subject process, you don't have to remove the memory. What you do is you heal the trauma, you heal the memory so that the person has the experience, they have the memory of it, but there's no longer any emotional baggage. It means, what it means when they think about it is it's just a memory. Yes, it happened, but it doesn't, I learned from it, I'm better now. Now, if you want to remove the memory, it is so much easier to go through that process first of healing the memory, so it's no longer important, and then you can remove it by putting up in very deep hypnosis amnesia toward that memory. If you do it without healing the memory, you're essentially locking in the trauma. They just don't have access to it. Now, you may, from that, get the very same result as healing it, but I tend to think it is not the most ecological or healthy process for the individual. Now, again, we're talking about amnesia, about creating absence of memory. There is a level of that is worth talking about, and that is, can you intentionally program yourself to do something that you will intentionally not remember afterwards? I'm not entirely sure if that's true. There are some examples of where that could be possible. There is the case of dissociated identity disorder, where there is lost time or trauma creates absence of memory. As an anecdote, a story I heard is a lady who had this childhood memory of traveling across country with her parents. And she remembers taking off, and she remembers arriving, but she doesn't remember anything in between. And in hypnosis, what happened is she recalled having to witness her parents having sex in the hotel room. And of course, that created this desire to not remember anything about the trip. And so that is possible. But let's just assume you want to intentionally program yourself to do something and then not remember it. The only conditions I'm aware of where that has been done is in the area of religious invocation. And typically, you might be familiar with it in voodoo or hoodoo, the Santeria religions. They invoke a spirit. They ask this spirit to come into their body, and they lose awareness. They are totally absent of what is happening. And it's culturally supported, so it can continue to happen within that culture. In Christian culture, Christians may not like the idea of the comparison, but when someone becomes filled with the Spirit in evangelical and some of the more conservative forms of Christianity, they go into a trance. They convulse, they may speak in tongues, and they may have absolutely no memory of the experience. Now, how that is done is you first have to develop an understanding of what that personality is. For someone who is deeply religious, they focus on a deity, all the qualities of this particular saint or spirit or orisha or deity. They learn everything about it. They absorb themselves in what they know about this entity. And they have to go through, they may do it through dancing, they may do it through singing or chanting or swinging, but they sort of induce a trance in themselves and give themselves full, total, unbridled permission to simply leave their awareness and let this spirit come into them. Now, can you control the spirit? Can you control this new personality that you've created to do something, like, for example, to rob a bank? Well, you might be able to. I mean, you would have to really give that personality all of these qualities. Maybe you can make this new personality more confident, more daring. Hopefully you wouldn't want it to commit a crime, but when that personality has done its job, it's entirely possible you could be back there and wondering what the heck happened. Now, typically in psychology, this is called a fugue state, but it is not an absence of consciousness. It's just a memory wall that is created between who you think you are now and what happened on the other side of that wall. But let's go back to the original question. Is it possible to guide oneself into a state so deep that you emerge with amnesia? The answer is yes, probably. It is incredibly difficult to do it on your own. I did create a product. It's called the Super Somnambulist Training, and it's an audio series in which you listen to a progression of trainings, and the final progression, if you volunteer to do it, is to create amnesia for yourself, so that when you awaken for at least 15 minutes, you have no idea who you are, why you're there, and what you're doing. Yeah, and believe me, it is very confusing, but it's all set up so that it's part of a progression, and it's all set up that you're in a very safe place. Ideally, you would have someone there who is being supportive and sort of overseeing you during this process. And if you're interested in that, I'll put a link below to it. So it's a good question. Amnesia certainly is possible in hypnosis. It's the result of focusing your attention, and as you focus more and more on something, what happens is you don't pay attention to other things. So it is entirely possible that can happen, but designing it and doing it intentionally and having an outcome for it, that is going to be the most challenging and the most difficult aspect of it. It would probably take a great deal of practice. To do it on your own, it would be a lot easier if you had a hypnotist or someone there who knew what they were doing to guide you through that. I hope that answers your question. As I said, it was a great question. It's one of those questions I would ask and do as much research as I could myself on, and even test it out in my own head. I've done a little bit of creating amnesia myself with limited success. Best I've been able to do is have absence of time for while I'm meditating. And that quality of focus is so deep that I'm not even moving. It's just like, there's nothing controlling me. I'm so focused, everything just seems to stop. But if you have any questions about this, please post them in the comments. It's a great question, and thank you so much for asking. I really do appreciate it. Take care. Bye.